Hey, happy Monday. Hope you made it through week 8. We're looking at week 9. A lot changed this week, huh? A lot changed. Half the field got knocked out. Lost a lot of good people this week. I'm gonna pour one out for all the homies we lost. Never fun to get knocked out of circle, right? All the hopes and the dreams you get to do every day about the 18 million just deferred for another year. But that's not going to stop us from analyzing this contest. My family's got 2 entries still, so your boy's still having the dreams every day that we might get on that winner stage. Anyway, let's look into what's happening. See, each entry is about 9K now. 1/9 of the field remains. And one thing, I tweeted yesterday from the Atlas account about people who saved Indy. I think that's the first thing that we should look at, because that's pretty interesting, and it's also using the filters. Can kind of show off how I got that graphic. So we're in the lobby. We're looking at the entries. Let's just filter for all those that have Indy available. Boom. Availability. We can just hide this. For people who haven't seen, you can kind of rearrange all these things over here. So 192 had Indy yesterday and used a different team. I would think vast majority of them knew what they were getting into. They knew they were foregoing the huge favorite to improve their entry, right? They're trying to get themselves a stronger entry by burning a weak-ass team like Cincinnati or Atlanta. Ugh. But so out of those 192, 148 got punished for it. And it looks dumb, like in hindsight, right? Oh, they should have just taken the favorite. But I kind of respect all those entries doing that. I think the idea that the Colts were disappearing, availability, we see the live availability, they're doing a 2%. That makes a big difference when you're looking at a team that are really good and basically no one in the field has them. If you're in that spot, you're one of those 44 entries that save the Colts and risk it on whatever team. You have like way more scoop value than everyone else in the field, basically. If you're thinking about getting that 18 million, making your entry worth the most possible, the scoop, you got to think about the scoop value of different teams you have. And for example, Kansas City, they might be like the best team. They're on both holidays. Clearly powerful team to have. But with 57% available, can they really scoop anyone? Of course, later in the season, there's going to be spots, right, where people have used them more than anyone else. But when Colts are already at 2%, that means all the future weeks where they're a viable pick, they have that scoop value. And some of those weeks, we'll see how important that is. Like, I'm thinking week 13, there's a few favorites that week, and it's really up in the air who's going to be available and who's not, whether it's the Chargers, the Rams, whatever. But one certainty of it is that the Colts will not be very available. So the Colts are going to maybe help some people scoop this whole thing, right? Although, man, do you feel for the people who stepped out on Atlanta or Cincinnati? One of them, 1% picked Baltimore. That one seemed kind of crazy, right? Lamar's out. I mean, maybe they locked it before Lamar was out, but could you imagine having an entry that had Colts available and you put it on Baltimore, do you think that person knew Lamar was out, or they just? That seems such a crazy play. There's always these little crazy plays. Like you're looking ahead to Thanksgiving, Baltimore, you kind of want them in your pocket. Even if you're not convinced they're going to be good, or you're not convinced Cincinnati's going to be bad, like you want them in your pocket. So to burn Baltimore when you could have played Indy seems kind of weird. We were leaning more on the Cincinnati Bengals yesterday, and their defense was so bad. It's hard not to just imagine any team with a pulse on offense putting up, 5 points of drive or whatever it was. I want to say it's unbelievable that the Jets put up 500 yards after what we saw before against Denver, but nothing's unbelievable in the NFL, right? We got a good sport. Anything can happen. Let's jump to this week, though. Let's talk about this week. I say this week. We're still in week 8 right now. We got this Kansas City game tonight, hosting Washington. I could knock out. I guess it's about 5% of the field now is on Kansas City. So something for everyone to tune into. That'll give us the final. Once that's complete, the new week starts tomorrow. We can start looking at week 9 on the website, but we're looking ahead right now. And this week, man, first glance, it feels like not that exciting. There's these 3 huge favorites: Rams, Chargers, Green Bay. Throw Detroit in if you want, but 98% have the Chargers available. They're playing at Tennessee -10. 79% have the Rams available. They're hosting the Saints. Green Bay, a lot more restricted, but another one seems like free win, right? Green Bay versus Carolina. So, how much of the field is going to be on those 3 teams? Basically everyone can pick from them. Let's see who already burned those, actually. If you go to teams, and we have to jump ahead to week 9. And looking at the best available. So let's think, the Thursday game, Baltimore at Miami. That's kind of interesting. First thought is scared. Don't want to waste Baltimore when they got this weird injury stuff. Miami figured out some good plays for them maybe. But the line's -7.5. I think you can bet that right now. So that's a real line. 37 minutes ago, that line was out there. We'll see how many people are going to play with that one, but let's see how many people don't have those top teams. Let's say the top 5 teams: Rams, Chargers, Packers, Lions, Ravens. So the people whose second best entry would be New England. Does that make sense? Oh, let me look at this. The best available. So 2 entries have burned Chargers, Packers, Rams because their best available would be Detroit. There's 2 of these entries. Let's look at them just to make sure this works. Yep, 2 entries, burn those teams. So the point being, lots of the big favorites this week, they're all available. And they seem, just from like a ball point of view, they just seem like locks, right? Like how are these teams, Rams, Chargers, Packers, even Lions, Baltimore, like these are all strong teams, kind of. Maybe the Baltimore is iffy, but they're all playing some weak teams. But it's not like you can just not think about this week, right? Like your entry matters a lot, especially all these 3 teams that we're looking at: Rams, Packers, Chargers. Keep saying them, but they have weeks, like important weeks in the future, that are going to interact with your entry in different ways. Just going along these top 2 rows, you can see how many ones Green Bay and Rams are favorites for. Lots of weeks where it kind of matters. And then there's the week 13, Rams, Chargers on top of that right now. And they're also part of the favorites from week 17. So weird week, right? It's like it feels like survival is like assured for everyone, but how do you set your entry up? And of course, stuff can happen. People can get knocked out. Um, I know, for example, stuff I'm thinking about is Chargers. All season been thinking, okay, there's kind of mini bottleneck weeks after the holidays. Chargers are good for each of those, so I want to save them deep. But the whole field has them saved then. So do you want to kind of get rid of them before then? Save Green Bay and Rams by using Chargers this week. That seems like a decent enough approach. All these teams are going to be, they all have their spots. And if you could save all of them, you're going to be powerful, but it's hard to do that. Personally, looking down here, New England against Atlanta, Jacksonville against Vegas, even maybe Dallas against Arizona, it feels like could get some, can get a win in those spots. You probably are going to win, right? I mean, that's what the odds are. You big chance to win, and your favorite to be able to get through the later weeks without burning those top teams. But it's just like we saw this past week. Do you want to risk it? You want to not take the minus 14 team? And this week, because there's 3 teams, whatever, 4 or 5, there's so much teams with high win percent that if you go low, like if you're on Jacksonville because you think Vegas has no chance, then the math makes it way riskier. Like most of the field is just gaining on you immediately because they are so much more likely to survive than you. There's a big difference between -3 right here, Jacksonville at Vegas, 60%, compared to -13, 87%. So tough decision. It's a weird one because it's tough, but it's not gonna mess with people if you're gonna stick with one of these favorites because they have such a high chance of survival. The consequences of the pick this week likely won't be felt for another month or so. I mean, it's week 13 and you don't have an LA team and maybe you already burned the Packers. I think, of course, we're putting projections out tomorrow. Like always, gut says 87%, 79% available in Rams. Lots of people will take the Rams. Probably not an insane amount because of these other teams existing. Chargers playing at Tennessee, 98% available. Maybe a third of the field wants them. Maybe they're the most popular because everyone else is just content getting these other teams through. If I had to guess right this second, I'd say Rams, then Chargers, then Green Bay, then Baltimore would be the top 4. And, last week, it was really top heavy. There was a lot of teams that were viable picks that were only 2% picked or something like that. That problem will probably get even more extreme this week, or that kind of imbalance where anyone reaching down to the low teams in week 9, it's just such a stretch. It's really hard to get yourself to submit one of these teams when these teams exist, especially considering entries per person now. Let's compare what entries per person were when the year started. So look at this. When the year started, was at about 10%, 11% of the field had one entry. And when you have multiple entries, it's easier to kind of throw one on something, throw one on something else, diversify, just try to get something through. We don't have that luxury when you have one entry. So beginning of the year, 11%, let's say, I had one. And now that we're going into week 9, let's see how week 8 closed out. Of course, we have a game tonight. Like I said, it's not final, but now over half the field is made up of players with one entry. That's a big difference, right? When most of the field comes from a person with just one entry. It's a very different game. And you kind of don't want it to be a different game if you're the one picking, right? In your head, you want to just make the best decision whether you got one entry or 5 entries. But man, it's different when you got one, and Thanksgiving is in sight, right? Maybe you got the teams next few weeks that are perfect. You got Denver, you got New England. You can get to Thanksgiving if you just lock it in now. So I think it makes people take less risk. When you have one, it's hard to click the -5 when there's a -12, right? So yeah, and that feeling will just get more over time as everyone collapses down to just having one entry. I think last year, it took to week maybe 13 to get there. So it's something to watch. There does seem to be a kind of not desperation, but there's some vibe like that at this point in the field where, okay, now we're going along pretty good. We're almost halfway, and we just had a 50% slashing event. People feel that in their bones. You got to think people are going to be stepping out a little less this week, even though there's less opportunities. So something to think about. Getting your entry straight. Prepare it for the future. There's with 2,000 left. Let's just say quick math. There's 2,050 left, and let's say every week 25% can get cut. So like every week, each entry is on a 75% to win team. 5, 6, 7, 8, which we know is not likely because of the 2 holidays. But if you just run 10 weeks of that, the field gets chopped down 95%. So that's like 100 people. And then you imagine the holidays maybe shave off 40% twice. Random numbers. There's obviously way better, smarter ways to predict how many people are going to be at the end, but it looks something like 20, 30 right now, I think. Would love someone dive into that, do a sharper answer, but with that few people, we're going to have some spots where there's like scoop possibilities, I think. There's not too many people left where there's just enough good entries to cover all the spots. If you were looking at the manifest last week, just trying to find where people have good entries, there's like, 1,000, 2,000 great entries. And you think like, how can I stay ahead of all these people and have a shot at the big money? But hey, live by the plucky small favorite, die by the plucky small favorite. Because we know a lot of those great entries got chopped off. So I'm curious now how many people still have all the Thanksgiving favorites. That's Detroit, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Philly. Yeah, so I think last week it was like over 1,000 great entries, and that number got cut down by way more than what the field got cut down. The field got cut down by half, right? And this number got cut down by 75%. So it looks like a lot of the people playing cute, picking all these bad teams, preserving their holiday strength, those people got extra punished this past week. Just based on what I remember from last week's walkthrough. Anyway, It's time to cut this off. Tomorrow, I'm back with Mikey. Mikey was on the Bills. He's still in. But I don't know about that Bills pick, man. I got something to say to Mikey tomorrow. So, we're firing that up. That's 2:00 Eastern, 11:00 Vegas. And also an hour before that, we'll drop our opening projections for the week. And look forward to all that stuff. So thanks for checking it out. Later.